I would like to talk about how Netflix is, I believe, a death machine. And I don't mean there's any kind of conspiracy. I don't think it was designed to be like this. But I've had this theory for some time that, in a weird way, in actually more than one ways, Netflix has become invested in people dying in very strange ways. I first had this thought several months ago. And I thought, okay, Justin, that's one of your kind of silly ideas. Surely, it just sounds a bit ridiculous. So I kind of put it on the shelf. And then just today, I was reading a scholarly journal article that just came out, which attempted to measure empirically the causal effect of the Netflix show called 13 Reasons Why. I haven't watched it myself, but it's a show about suicide. And apparently it's kind of so sympathetic to the choice to commit suicide by a young woman or a young person, whatever kind. And it apparently was kind of so compelling that it led to almost a 30% increase in suicides for that month. Now, it's not a clean, perfect test of the causal hypothesis, but it's a quasi-experimental design. And, I wouldn't put too much money on that estimate being exactly correct, but I find it quite plausible that this type of show would at least have some type of positive effect. So maybe you don't buy the whole number. It's a pretty major effect that they find. It's a pretty large effect. Maybe you don't buy that completely. I'm not so sure. I think I'm always kind of skeptical of social science findings like that, but there's probably something there, it seems to me. And so I started thinking about that. It's like, wow, okay, so the show might actually be increasing suicides. And this made me go back to my original idea, which now I don't think is so crazy, which is that in a weird way, Netflix is becoming like a death machine. What the thought that first came to my mind to this effect was that I'm a big fan of true crime shows. And Netflix in the past few years, let's say, Netflix in the past few years has produced a lot of really interesting and extremely compelling, entertaining, fun to watch, exciting, fascinating, true crime shows. Amazing stories that usually involve someone killing someone. And in a weird way, I've started reflecting on this, and it's like I'm a fan of death. Like, it's strange to be interested in true crime, to consume true crime documentaries. It's a bit perverse, because in some sense I enjoy watching stories about people dying. Now, that can be chalked up to my base kind of human interest in things like suspense and a good human interest story. What's more sinister is when you think about this on a kind of industrial scale. Netflix is a business that is now invested deeply in finding other stories of salacious, scandalous, horrifying, true crimes, including death. And so in some sense, if you think about how Netflix and other movie production, firms of any kind have to be constantly investing in the production of whatever sells. Well, what about the huge demand that exists for true crime? Is Netflix not actively involved and kind of hoping to constantly find more and more interesting murder stories? Is Netflix not going to possibly become, in ways that it doesn't fully understand, a kind of vested interest in ever new and ever more interesting and salacious true crime stories? Might we not imagine that there might be perverse incentives at one point for Netflix to even be investing in new ways that people might kill each other? Maybe that sounds far-fetched. I'm certainly not alleging that that's ever happened. But what we know from, I think, all of economic history is that when there are major rewards for different types of perverse activities, over the long run, you eventually find people, trying their luck with achieving those rewards, whatever it costs, whatever it takes. And so, yeah, when I started combining these two, then it started to really come into focus for me that, on the one hand, Netflix is one of the leading purveyors of murder stories, of true murder stories. It makes money off of murder stories and wants more and more salacious, entertaining murder stories. I myself am guilty of of finding them quite fascinating and interesting to watch. And it's also seems quite skilled, uniquely skilled at producing entertainment media that makes people want to kill themselves. So, look, I don't understand, the underlying mechanism, certainly not a conspiracy or anything like that. And this is obviously, admittedly, a very kind of loose hypothetical, or it's a theory, a hypothesis, if you will. But there seems to be at least a few ways in which the relationship between Netflix and human death is positively correlated and in some kind of non-trivial way. And if it was just one example of that in my mind, I would have kept this on the shelf. But after reading this recent article, I decided to make this little video advancing this hypothesis. So people should, I don't know, think about how that might play out. Maybe other people should develop other hypotheses. I don't know what it means. I don't know how it actually plugs into any kind of larger theory, perhaps, of Netflix and the role that Netflix plays in, contemporary consumer media or whatever you want to call it. But that's my thought for today.